Do you hear me? Yes, so I think we can start. Hey everyone, welcome. First Frontend Meetup organized by Productboard in very new office. I'm super honored to be the first one speaking here. I'm a little bit nervous though, like it's very different to be here in person than on Zoom, right? I mean, no filters, no virtual backgrounds. You are sweating, people can smell it. Well, let's go directly to my topic. I'm going to be talking about how to fight chaos in monorepo. And with that, let me please introduce myself. I'm Jakub Beneš. On the internet, I go with handle Jukben, and you can find me literally on every social network except for Polywork. I have different nick there. If you find me later, ask me, and I will answer you the story for that, but later after my presentation. I'm engineering manager and I'm leading front-end platform. And as you can guess, yes, we are hiring, and not only front-end engineers, we are hiring also back-end engineers, especially Kotlin one. So if you are here, don't be shy and let's say hi later. Agenda. What I'm gonna be covering today, I'm gonna briefly describe what's monorepo, what problems we have faced at Productboard, and what strategies we have deployed. And obviously, what to remember from our experience. And now let me start with this definition from Wikipedia on term monorepo, because I believe each presentation should have at least one screen from Wikipedia. So let me ask you a question. Who uses monorepo on daily basis? Please raise your hand. And as I can see, quite a lot of you, and that's good. That means this is the right place to be. And also I saw some hands, down. So this is also a great place to be. So that's awesome. We got it covered. So everyone is in the right place. Let me go through the definition real quick. As the name suggests, a monorepository is actually architectural concept where a single repository will contain code for multiple projects. It can consist, for example, SPA written in React plus iOS, Android app written in React Native. That's quite a common use case, I would say. Don't confuse it though with monolithic repository. The code in monorepo is usually well isolated. And obviously, like everything, there are cons and pros. So here's my starting with pros. So transparency is a big thing for me. And I believe the collaboration and visibility coming from having monorepo is actually a huge plus. Instead of having multiple configuration across multiple repositories, you are actually having single configuration to manage all the project, to make them manageable and easier to explore for everyone. Second point coming from it is dependency management. If there's common dependency, let's say, or even some other external dependency to be used in different projects, you can actually share it very easily within the monorepo. And what you can also do is to enforce it across all the projects within a monorepo. To give you some example, in our case, basically every SPA application written in React in our monorepo is using the same version of React. And let's face it, everyone wants to work with the latest version of React, and it's also better for knowledge sharing. This topic might be a bit controversial, but yeah, I like it, so I will share it anyway. If you have multiple projects within the monorepo, you can actually make one single atomic, change in Git, spreading across multiple projects. So it can help you in refactoring where you are touching multiple things at once. And since world is not just paradise, obviously, one of the biggest problem you are going to face if you go for monorepo setup are definitely build pipelines. If you would approach it naively, you would basically ended up building whole monorepo all the time, which gonna be tremendously slow. And like I'm speaking from my personal experience, and I'm gonna be showing you later on what it can mean in real example. Also, as your repository grows, because I expect you are being super successful, like the code you are adding is growing, you're gonna be facing limits coming from tooling you are using. Actually, huge companies spend tremendous, money and non-trivial resources basically to make monorepos powerful. Companies like Google, Airbnb, etc. And you might not have such a luxury, at least at the beginning, right? And last thing I'm going to mention is you can't really limit access to your monorepo. So it's not really our problem, I would say. I'm always super happy if someone in our engineering organization is trying to learn something outside of their domain, so they can, eventually contribute, like do some contribution, but it might be your problem. And surprisingly, at this point, no one is screaming, I hate monorepos, I hate this presentation already, so I might just skip, like this meme I've prepared for that occasion and go like directly to the next slide. Actually, I think it's quite important to do a bit of throwback to give you a bit of perspective and illustrate where things were when I joined Productboard 3 years earlier. It was almost like 80K lines of code in TypeScript project, and I actually joined in middle of refactoring from Flow to TypeScript. I'm not sure if there's Vojta Přikryl. I think, like he might have been there, but not really, never mind. Let's skip this. It was definitely biggest project I ever worked with till that day. And as it goes, we were, like adding code, we were adding features, we were pushing, like value to our customer. And I mean a lot of it. And it has almost, right now, it has almost 500K lines of code of TypeScript. I mean, like from almost 1,000 files in TypeScript, we grew to like almost 8, which is like crazy. That's like, I don't know, like 85% bigger. And then, one day, one big enemy emerged, CI pipeline. We did a couple of other things, and among them we've migrated from fairly good solution, Circle CI, to fairly good solution as well, GitLab CI, especially because of their security offering possibility to run CI runners within our own infrastructure. And we kept building things very, very, very naively. So guess what? Yep. I mean, like, you had to literally wait 60 minutes to, merge your feature branch to the master branch to get it released, and that was the point. I was like, finally, we did it. We have Oracle experience, like through enterprise, we have it, I achieved that, like, where's my promotion? And obviously, that's not really what I said. I said it didn't scale. It really didn't scale. So we put our hands together, hands as well, but I meant heads together. And within the front-end platform team, we conducted research, what we can do about current situation. We knew that we need tooling, but we weren't exactly in a position to write our own. By the way, is there anyone who loves writing tools for other developers? Awesome. So let's talk afterwards, because that's what we are looking forward. Looking to like let's meet up, because that's what we are looking for. So with our limited resources, we went on journey to search internet based on our couple of requirements, and those are the most prominent. So the first one was we wanted to have way how to visualize and operate huge dependency graph, because we already back in the day we knew that we need to somehow operate with all the complexity we have in our monorepo. You have multiple projects, those projects have dependency between them, so this was our biggest requirement. Also, we wanted to do something with the dependency graph. And in this example, we wanted to build, for example, only affected projects. We wanted to build some various tasks like deployment, build, end-to-end test, etc. for various projects within our monorepo. And last but not least, we also wanted to get API, which is opinionated enough to provide us scaffolding tools. Let's imagine that as generating file structure, for example, to maintain complexity and maintain consistency in the monorepo as we go. And gratefully, we found some tools, and from our early experiments, we have chosen NX because it matched all our boxes. Lerna was focused mostly on deployment from monorepo to registry like npm. So completely different use case than we had. And Rush back in the time, they really haven't had any scaffolding functionality we were looking for. So we created task force, and I would like to give kudos to Martin Hochel, who actually led this initiative. He's now at Microsoft, but like in some way, he's still with us. And the result, were pretty optimistic. We eventually started splitting our monolith into smaller chunks. We call them NX project. And then we were able to run those tasks separately in terms of test, ESLint, other linters, etc. Before, and that's kind of important, we had only one jest config, only one bubble config, only one TypeScript config. We were kind of approaching the problem from the monolithic perspective, and obviously it really wasn't scaling. It also provided us a layer of isolation, and that layer of isolation also enabled us to do something with ownership. And all of it was also a great foundation to solve the CI problem, and I'm going to be talking about it later. For those more curious about it, there's a blog I wrote about it. You can find it on our engineering medium. So let's show some graph. Graphs are also fun, right? So this is real graph of NX adoption rate we have. As you can see, adoption grows linearly since we started, and that was back in Q1 20. So it's some time we are running this NX, like thingy and monorepos in a way we imagined. And yeah, like to the stars. By the way, do you like the design of this rocket? I think it's a little bit controversial, but never mind, let's move on. So you ask what we got, and I'm gonna answer you, like the benefit number one was definitely content-aware pipeline. NX help us to run only affected part of our code base. So in example graph on right, you can see lib1, app1, app1 end-to-end tests. So let's imagine that you have touched library 1. You have added some fancy code, probably some buttons. Everyone loves adding buttons. So, like you added some button. And since this library is then required by app1, and app1 is required by end-to-end test for application 1, those projects in dependency graph are then marked as affected. And that's a great thing, because the rest of the project are being untouched. And that was a game changer for us, because obviously you need to imagine that our dependency graph is like tremendous, like probably, like if I would show it to you like here, you wouldn't be able to see anything, because like it would be super, super small. So, like if there is any chance how you can narrow those projects you are affecting, you will get immediate like performance boost. NX has also great support for distributed caching, which is like awesome, and like you feel really powerful about that. You get also very great, it's super effective within CI as well, because the cache is actually shared across all the environments, your environment as well. So that's awesome benefit. So in our case, we got this, you can literally have pipeline running only for 4 minutes. And in this particular change, it was made by our product team, Honey Badgers. I hope we have you in the audience. You are awesome. I love you. And I hope those names are not confidential though. So let's move to the next slide. What I'm trying to say is that the context and scope PR matter. And since it's content aware, it's actually in hands of each team to make basically their pipeline faster. It's kind of matter of architecture, if I should put it in this way. Here you can see average time, how average time differs from team to team. And in average, it's like 15 minutes. So we've got like 75% faster pipeline, and that's, I believe, like super awesome. Benefit number 2 is consistency and ownership. So we don't have yarn start, yarn build, yarn test, etc. We use NX run, NX serve, all over the place. Basically, the same goes for scaffolding and other tools coming from toolchain, which is provided by NX. So we are basically using entirely this new CLI. Every lib then is generated with same defaults, like ESLint configuration, Jest configuration, Babel configuration, etc. So This itself creates great opportunity for the owner to experiment with the setting, to do basically whatever they want, like let's imagine you are creating some crazy project and you really think like you need to implement some special ESLint rule for that. You can do that. You can just edit it in that config. And if the rule is awesome, you can then push it into our global configuration, and then everyone will get it. By the way, we are also pretty strict about pushing people like to add their like entry into ownership file, because I would say missing ownership is actually the greatest enemy in software development in general. Something without ownership basically just rots and it stinks. So be aware, like everything needs to have ownership. And I'm gonna be talking about ownership even like later on. So benefit number 3 was migration framework from us. And NX has actually really great support of generators, scaffolding tests, end-to-end tests, like default, webpack configuration, etc. It's quite opinionated, but, and that's important, it's extensible. You can even create your own migrations based on AST, for example, and then let each team to apply them or on their own pace. And basically, you are doing the heavy lifting for them. They run the migration change the code, they revisit it, and they push it into the master. But you are doing the heavy lifting for them, and that's super great for growing organizations like we are. The example is not super important though. What I'm trying to say is that you basically just run one command, and that's it. That's it, one command. And cherry on the top is observability. Because of the code owners, as I was talking later previously, since it's written down declaratively in code owners file, which is something what I believe is GitHub specific, we are then able to map NX project to ESLint issues, test coverage, and even more. So basically, in this example, it's coming from Looker. It's data visualization tool we are using. You can easily see that Nucleus is owning 19 projects, and like those projects have some coverage, they have some problems in ESLint, etc. That's not super interesting now, but interesting fact is that a lot of what you can see was actually built as a side effect during research how to measure adoption of our design system Nucleus. And to learn more about it, you can check it out, another blog, written by our very own Philip from Nucleus design system team. So next, what else do we have? And we haven't stopped there. With monorepo, we really realized that we have the power to speed up and empower developers. And that's what we did, because that's what we like to do, to empower and speed up developer. So we have implemented Danger.js. I'm not sure if you are familiar with that, but Danger.js essentially runs in your CI process, and it gives you very opinionated API how to work with, how to automate things based on GitHub, based on pipelines, etc. It will then create such a message in GitHub PR. And as I say, it's kind of linter for co-reviews. You can automate really everything, adding images into the description, everything. Like make robots do the chores, so humans can have fun. Like that's something what I kind of like. In our case, we give you affected, like projects, various links, dependencies created. We even, give you warning in case you are committing some dependency change in package.json and you forget to add yarn lock. It was actually super common before we implemented this rule, and with this rule, we were able to mitigate it. So yarn lock is always up to date. Next thing I'm very excited about is third-party service called Kodiak. At Productboard, we use trunk-based development, which technically means it's recommended to use short-lived branches. We have made decision to do integration on a feature branch, which technically means your PR needs to be up to date with master before you can merge it to the master. So, like you might say, okay, what's the benefit? The benefit is actually that we can then optimize the master pipeline and make it super, super effective, because we don't need to rerun another, like test or things like that. We just make sure that it's integrated well on that PR. And as you can imagine, in such a big monolith, such a big monorepo like we have with a lot of engineers, let's say 50 working at the same time, you would be updating that PR basically manually all the time. And for that, we have configured Kodiak. You just add auto merge label and the Kodiak waits till the PR passes all checks, then update the PR on its own and merge it to the master automagically. And then it's get auto deployed, etc., etc. Again, robots are friends, not really enemies. Yes. And this is more like shameless plug. It's something I've written myself. It's also application living in our monorepo. It's actually a GitHub app using super powerful GitHub annotation API. If you don't know it, it's great. We have noticed that developers kind of tend to ignore CI outputs, especially if it's just about warnings. It's like, warning, okay, let's push it. So, like we actually realized if we can, get it closer to them, like they might actually do something about it. So we did it. We basically put it right into code review. So then you can have meaningful discussion with your peer about the issue you are seeing in the code review. And last but not least, we have also developed in-house bot which watch for bundle size of our chunk. And in case there's huge addition or deletion, it raises a warning. Actually, it's more beneficial than you would think, because it's not that hard to get into production bundle, for example, whole storybooks ecosystem. Unfortunately, like this is true story. I'm a little bit ashamed of it, but like with this, it's never gonna happen again on this bot watch. So yeah, takeaways. Monorepos are not easy. At some scale, you probably need a dedicated team for that. If you have more than 2 pizza teams working with monorepo, you can't really expect, that the maintenance will happen automatically. You need to somehow optimize for that. However, if the setup is right, it speeds up things, especially if your code base is interconnected. Tooling has great impact, and NX proven to be really great solution for our use case. And lastly, you don't need to be Google to think about your developers and optimize for their life. And that's all for today. Thank you very much. I hope you have enjoyed our journey through monorepo. So here are some links I was referring to, and I will share those slides later on my Twitter. So it's time for questions, so I should somehow do it, right? Yep. Nice. I did it. So basically, do we have any questions from the public? But you already wrote it like on Slido. Okay, so.
Okay, thanks. I wanted to ask if your monorepo is JavaScript only? Or do you host multiple languages there?
Our monorepo is actually still called PB Frontend, but actually we have also a discussion about GraphQL Gateway in the future, but yeah. Yeah, it's, should I repeat it? If it's JavaScript only monorepo, for now, yes. Yes. However, NX has support for Go, for Java, and for other languages, so it should be fine to use it. But it's written in JavaScript. Thank you. Great question. That's great that you have noticed. I'm using Keynote, which is great app, and there's the fire effect and even more fancy effects, but I was kind of afraid to use them. So Keynote. Do you have issues in your large monorepo with common package JSON and common node modules? Do you have different app slips built on different stacks? Large common package and common node modules. Like that it's large, basically, yes, I think our node modules are having I don't know, like 2 gigs or more even. So we are about to deploy some optimization for that as well. We are thinking to pre-build kind of images on Docker and then load it. So we are not extracting the cache every time. But yeah. Okay, what happened? Okay, that's good. So the next question is there a dedicated team that maintains monorepo? How many people? Actually, right now we are in a phase where we are like changing the setup a bit. In the past, it was front-end platform team, and we were in a peak 4 developers, 3 maybe more. Yeah. But right now, it's actually super new thing. We are we are in a process of creating new team focus on developer experience, basically, and we are expecting even like a higher number of the members. I think it's around 6, but let's speak to Tony actually over there, because if you are interested in that, you know, like that would be great to have such a discussion. Thank you. Great question. So, I mean, like in terms of TS config, not really, but you know, like it's basically, yeah. Sorry. How did having separate TS config, ESLint, etc. per project have helped you? So in terms of TS config, I can't really remember anything super special. It's more for the fact that at some point we might decide to build every package on its own. It's something we are not doing right now, but we really want to have such a possibility to kind of have it isolated. In ESLint case, there are teams already experimenting with different, you know, rules, and by kind of toggling, you know, like basically opting out a bit from our default, you know, configuration. So it gives teams flexibility to kind of make things for them better. I hope it's answered. How do you deal with breaking changes that affects multiple application coming from either third parties, dependencies, or NX slips? Yeah, it's kind of like Google approach, right? I mean, like we are running on, basically everything is running on head version. There is no really versioning. And the same for design system. It's nice example of it. We are not, I mean, like in past, I was part of the project where we actually have design system in different repository, and it also brought like a lot of problems because the development was extremely slow. People, they were basically hacking in node modules just to see it work. So in our case, it's actually one code base. Okay. So next one is, how frequently do new NX projects get created? What would be the example of those projects? So it's actually, as you could have seen from that graph, it's being created on quite a good pace. I would say it's, if I'm not mistaken, it's something like 40, 30 per quarter. And we are also like having these discussions like what should be the size of NX, you know, package, because obviously you can do the same you can do the same mistakes like with microservices, basically optimizing too early. However, we have documentation in place, and there are some types of NX projects you can create. Usually it's UI consisting reusable UI components, pure components basically. There's util type of dependency having, you know, utilities. There's data access basically that's for contacting. It means creating new NX project. Yeah, the second question is actually pretty good. I forgot to mention it in the presentation. We currently have 310 or something like that NX projects. We have started in Q1 20, yeah. So could you give some specific example on what is the unit to be treated as a separate project, and how many projects do you have? So like, yeah, we have 310. And yeah, as I basically, you know, kind of replied on that in the previous question. So yeah, it might be even util or reusable UI for that particular domain. What's the size of the yeah? That's some. So the question is, what's the size of your monorepo? How long does it take to clone it? How long does it the first dir npr install take? So that's actually interesting. I might delete it later, and we might try it together. So if you are interested in that, please leash me out, and I'm gonna delete PB frontend and clone it and run your install from scratch, and you can see it. Obviously, like I would say cloning is not the biggest problem. It's more the yarn install kind of takes some time. And the last question, what about backend services? Are they part of the monorepo? If not, why? I think I answered that as well. We are having those discussions. However, I'm not sure this is gonna happen super fast. We might do some experiments with GraphQL initiative we are preparing currently. So more about it later on some different presentation, I believe. And that's all. So thank you. Okay. We have maybe a few more questions.
Yeah, I have one more question. When you mentioned that one of the benefits of monorepo is you have the same version of libraries across all the projects, so you somehow enforce it? If yes, so how does it happen when, for example, you upgrade React and a couple of projects doesn't work? Who is responsible for upgrade it? If you don't own these projects, maybe you are somehow not happy to do that. So if you can elaborate on it.
I mean, like in this example, and that's a very good question, and it doesn't have really like easy answer, obviously. In React upgrade example, we did React update in past, and it was it was fine, and that's actually kudos to Facebook team. But usually how we would take, what the approach would be from our side is that the React upgrade would be actually led by front-end platform team. We would do basically the research, we would kind of plan it strategically, and then we would board the teams into it, because like the idea is that, like you want to consume that new React version because you want to unlock that potential. However, there is possibility to kind of have multiple versions. In our case, we have React Router, some super small, old version, and also we are having new React Router 6, I think. You can kind of alias it in package.json. So it's solvable, but we are trying to be, in the shape where everyone is using the same dependency. And you can imagine it in everything, the same version of fetch, the same version of, I don't know what other dependencies we have. I'm gonna there. Or maybe you can come closer to me, right? So we can meet here.
Hey, this was a great question. So my follow-up question to that would be, what's the priority of such an upgrade? Like, do you have it in your backlog somehow sorted so that the PMs not getting features agree to this?
I mean, like that's and again, like great question, and those things are in general like pretty hard to solve. In the case of React, I believe this gonna be driven by with React, with new version, with the breaking version, actually version 18, if I'm not mistaken. The whole upgrade is gonna be driven by product needs. Like obviously, even though we would like to have everything on the bleeding edge, like it's not probably obviously the best strategy. But if there's gonna be like such a case where we're gonna benefit, and I don't know, from server components or how it's called, I'm not sure. We would create such a case, and we would kind of help our organization as a platform team to get there. That's basically the mission.
So if there's tools that are relying on the new version, and the PM is not getting any value of you using that tool in your platform team, you're still stuck with the old version.
It's probably, it's part of the prioritization. If, we couldn't kind of prove the case, we couldn't prove the value we would get from it, it wouldn't get prioritized. We have quite a huge backlog with a lot of things to take care. So yeah, it would be part of the discussion. And the discussion is not happening just in platform tribe. Obviously, it's happening in together with product, with PMs, with basically leaders of the product together. So yeah, but great questions, and like feel free to like ask even more questions without microphone next to my mouth. So yeah, thank you.